everybody, and this afternoon I'm really excited that we're with Ruby Wolk, Ballet Senior Manager of the Learning and Participation Department at the Royal Opera House, who is brilliantly going to talk to us about her experience as a dance mama. Ruby I've known for a while, so sit back with a cup of tea and get comfy, because we are. In fact, I have brought a specific prop for this afternoon.
Look at that.
RH mug.
Well done, branded up.
Branded up. And we'll get cracking. So, just for everybody, tell us a bit about the context in which you work and parent usually, I think.
Okay, so pre-pandemic craziness. So I work full time. I have two little boys, 8 and 4. I generally work sort of basic office hours, but of course in the industry that we work in, office hours are sometimes a little bit flexible and a bit movable. But I tend to start earlier, finish earlier, so that I can dash off and pick the boys up, and my other half will do the drop off in the morning. So it's all a huge rush, always. I always feel like I'm leaving in the middle of something, or having to say, no, I can't do that meeting because I'm actually leaving a bit earlier than most people leave. But the plus point of it is that because I get in a bit earlier to make up my hours normally, I have relative quiet and focused time, and my brain works a lot better at that time anyway. So it works quite well in many ways.
Yeah. And it's a really demanding, busy job that you've got. And do you feel kind of within that? I think it's great that the hours work out in that way, that you're able to really facilitate as much as possible, because like you say, it does shift around. So what would you say probably in that is the most challenging aspect for you pre-COVID?
I think the fact that I work in a performing arts sector, and I would really love to be able to see more of the shows at the Opera House, but also outside of the Opera House. It's very, very hard to fit in additional time to go and see stuff on top of usual working full-time hours. So that's a real challenge. But also that thing that I said earlier about always feeling like I'm leaving in the middle of something. I don't get that moment to kind of tie up my thoughts and finish what I'm doing for the day and then leave. And to be honest, if I did that, I may end up doing really long hours. I could see myself, if I didn't have something to rush off and go home for, I could see myself staying for a lot longer than I should in the office. So it's not ideal, to do that, but at the same time it is quite stressful to have to go right down tools, 4:30, got to go, not have that headspace to kind of finish it off. And sometimes I can kind of finish something off in my head, or actually literally on the train on the way home, but it does mean that I sort of bring it with me. I don't really leave it behind. I don't leave and of course I have a huge passion for what I do. I think most people that work in the arts do, and so in one way that's a huge blessing that I love what I do, but in the same time it's a bit of a curse, because it means that I don't necessarily just switch it off. I bring it home with me quite a lot, and I always feel like I've got one little bit of my head thinking about whatever it was that I didn't quite manage to finish in the office, or mulling something over. So that's the challenging bit, is it's always with me, and it therefore means that I feel more thinly spread perhaps than is comfortable sometimes.
Yeah, I think that sense of completion is really difficult to get as a parent, I think, from the get-go. Which is really tough, and just that feeling of too many tabs open, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
particularly when both areas of your life are demanding in different ways, but they're quite consuming. Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then just to amplify that, how has the pandemic changed that, either up or down?
So I think there are some ups and downs actually. There's obviously the lack of commute now means that I can get home earlier. I mean, you know, I'm home the whole time, but it does mean that I can leave my workspace and get back into the family space in time to make a nice dinner, whereas I would never have time to do that before. But I think in the same way, what happened when lockdown hit us very quickly was that suddenly all the work-life boundaries were completely collapsed. What I found was that I could almost see them crumbling in front of me. I just felt like, okay, so it was quite simple when I actually left the house and I went to work and my kids went to school, and it was difficult enough into what we've talked about already in terms of having one bit of my brain on it all the time anyway, but actually physically being a different place, having that train ride home, no matter how unpleasant it is on the central line, you still have that time to decompress and switch back into family mode. None of that existed. So the first few weeks I found the most challenging, to try and create those new boundaries, all with everything happening all in the same place all at the same time. So to create that structure I found really, really challenging, and it's easier now that we're a bit more practiced at it. But I also think there's an interesting thing about comparison and sort of feeling guilty and a bit shamed sometimes is what I felt. I really, really observed, particularly in the first month or so of lockdown, how guilty I felt about everything, because I felt like nothing was being done well. Couldn't do my job well because my kids would just come and interrupt all the time. I couldn't do parenting well because I had to try and do my job. Like it all just, that until we re-established more boundaries and structure, it just felt like nothing, like I was failing on all fronts. And I kept on, I tried not to, but I kept on thinking, oh God, I bet they're doing it better, or I bet that family down the road are doing it better, and I bet that, you know, and like just completely, because there was some sense of similarity between everybody's struggles, I guess, even though everyone's in their own situations, obviously, but there is that sense of everyone's got to stay at home and you've got to deal with it. That sense of comparison really came to get me. It really it just kind of crept up on me. It made me feel like I wasn't doing anything well and everyone was obviously doing it better than me, and kind of got it in check more now, but I really noticed that.
And I'm sure they weren't, knowing you very well, I'm sure they weren't, but I can completely understand it. I mean, we've just been thrown into complete chaos, and just trying to, like you said, try and find some structure and things to hook things, you know, anything on, has been really, really difficult. I think even for those of us who are used to creating programs and delivering programs for other people, to try and instill those for ourselves and be disciplined with them and keep up the motivation has not always been, well, it's really difficult. And I really appreciate your honesty on that, because I think absolutely we all have felt that. Definitely she's coming from a slightly difficult day this end.
I think all the forums, like the forum, the community chat that you've done, and also the Women of the World talks around what it's like to be a working mum, I found really valuable, because you realise that actually you hear people saying stuff that you can relate to so much, and that's when that sense of comparison is actually helpful. Rather than it being when you're on your own and you're thinking, oh God, they're all doing it better and they're not feeling what I'm feeling. When you actually start talking to people in a similar situation, and specifically working mothers, you start to realise that everyone's up against it in the same way, and there's a lot of shared experience that's useful to just remember you're not on your own with it. So I found actually the good thing about the lockdown is I've found more time to visit those sorts of forums. There's been more opportunity to share experiences, and I find often in my job at the Royal Opera House, it's so hectic, so busy. There's so much to do even in the building, because it's such a complex structure of a building that you can easily not look outside of that quite enough, and I'm constantly trying to ensure that I do. But this pandemic's enabled me to to have more time, partly because you don't have to actually physically go to where the place is. You just press a button and you're on a Zoom. But there's much more sense of connection, weirdly, I think, than there was before. And also kids are right there with you. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Like, your kids are there. They're just very there all the time. And that can be challenging, but at the same time it means that people can't ignore it. They can see what your challenges are as a parent. And I've had my colleagues say to me, oh, what works around your schedule now? What works in terms of when would a meeting work? And there was a lot of flexibility pre-COVID as well. I mean, the learning team at the Opera House are brilliant. It's very flexible, but it is, as you know, Lucy. But I just think the constant presence of your family at work now in COVID times is quite an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, and I think that level of empathy, like you say, because it's seen, is really there. And I think those sort of chats, either the community chats with Dance Bar or the WOW ones, the kind of sense for me was really to recreate some meaningful water cooler chat time that you would otherwise not getting with our colleagues. And as much as I, as well, like to throw myself into my work, the other part of the passion of work is the brilliant people that you get to work with, and having that time where we might have had our heads buried in the spreadsheets for a bit, and then you sort of come up above water and go, oh, have you seen so and so, or have you watched this, or and having that time for connection. And sort of to go back to that as well, I think brilliantly, obviously the Opera House are the first people to live stream from a theatrical space in Saturday just gone. This whole period has opened up being able to see more work for parents, I think, which has been, again, a real bonus. Yes, we can't be in the space live with it, but I think I've had the capability to see more stuff than I've ever done before, and I really hope that's something that stays as we hopefully move forward out of it. So sort of going back a bit in time now to when you fell pregnant and had maternity leave and that kind of thing, what were your kind of thoughts around that, sort of working in an arts organisation context? What was that experience like for you?
So I think the most important bit of support when I was pregnant was to feel like I was being listened to feel heard, to be given a platform to express any concerns I might have or ask any questions. And I really did get that a lot at the Opera House, and I was very, very grateful for that. And that's something that I've carried forward into the way that I manage teams now, is enabling a place where people can, a safe space where people can be listened to, and even if you don't have all the answers, listening is a very, very good starting point. And I think I had a lot of help to manage any potential stress and workload. I mean, workload is always an issue at the Opera House. It's just very, very busy in the best possible way, but it can be stressful at times to try and manage it all. And I think when you're pregnant, you have to be really aware of managing stress carefully. And I felt like my boss did a really good job of helping me to manage that, and I felt looked after, which I think is important, and heard.
Do you feel that there are any sort of big changes when you returned? Probably maybe with your first pregnancy rather than your second pregnancy, because sort of second time around you're a bit more aware of what is going to happen. But what do you feel was kind of the biggest shift?
For me personally, I felt like I had increased confidence in my decision-making abilities, and ability to sort of follow my instinct and have faith in it, because I'd practiced that a lot. You kind of have to with
first times, isn't it, in the entire time that you're cared for by our medical system, where it's really instilled in you on a pretty much every appointment basis, follow your gut and your maternal instincts, whereas we kind of ignore it across a lot of the rest of
yeah.
But
but actually what I realized coming back to work is that it's just such a valuable thing to trust. It's such a valuable thing to to be able to just go with a hunch and sort of see where that takes you, and be open to it not necessarily going the way you think it's going to go. That's another really important one that you learn. I mean, anything you do as a parent doesn't really go the way that you think it's going to go. Like the negotiation that you have to do with a toddler is second to none. Like you will never negotiate with a harder party than a toddler. That is your own negotiation skills.
So I guess sort of taking it into that, and we've talked about how you've kind of brought that experience into leading teams, and you know the team that you lead at the Opera House is huge. It's probably one of the biggest learning teams in the industry, and then the impact of people beyond that in terms of participants runs into tens of thousands. Are there any other ways that your parenting really influences your work?
Yeah, well, I don't lead the whole team. Just a caveat. I lead the ballet team, which is a relatively small sub team within the bigger team. But I do lead quite a large team of casual staff or freelancers who deliver on our programs, who are not in the office all the time. So actually, that's another. It's a sort of different layer of challenge in terms of leading people working remotely quite a lot as well. But I think one of the main things that I've realised since being a parent, and also particularly since coming back to work as a parent, is the importance of your support system around you, the importance of feeling like you've got people who have got your back, who you know, mostly family in my case, and friends as well, who you can rely on to share the load effectively. That is just, you can't, it is impossible to do it. I could not do my job. I would have to give up my job if I didn't have that end of, like, that's just the way it is. And so I've sort of realised how important that is to take into my work, and the structures that how I structure my teams, and how I lead my teams, and how they can contribute. So creating an environment that everyone can contribute their best in means having the right level of support, and the right level of creating a space where people feel trusted, and like they are not going to fall. It's not quite the right terminology, but you know, I want to let people know that I have got their back, and vice versa. And I think in parenting, I'm gonna think about everything I've read that Brené Brown has written now, because I love it so much. And it just occurred to me in a recent whilst we were restructuring the Chance to Dance program, it really made me, it was quite a vulnerable position to be in. It's a really big program, and it means a huge amount to the Opera House, and it was time to restructure it and think about how we could have enable it to have a national presence. And it felt like quite a vulnerable place to be, to explore which direction the program will be in. And I feel like the way that I managed to get through that slightly uncomfortable feeling of vulnerability is to surround myself with a team who could contribute so much expertise but so much support, and vice versa, that it felt okay to be vulnerable. And I think and it's mirrored in how I try to do life in family life as well, to sort of have that support structure around me to enable that vulnerable space to feel possible, rather than for it to feel so scary that you have to run away from it at full speed. Because I believe that that vulnerability is really important. It's inevitable, but it's really important that I don't run away from it, both professionally and in my family life. And so that's my solution to not running away from it is to have my support systems. And so I want to try and enable that for other, not only working parents in my teams, but everyone actually.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. And as I said, you absolutely, you dare greatly, definitely. Lots of braving. We love Brené.
Yeah.
But I think particularly creative people love Brené Brown because what we are doing on a daily basis, and I think sometimes the creativity behind learning programs isn't always as visible as, Francesca Hayward on stage. That's very, very visible in people's minds, but it is hugely vulnerable creating programs where you often have different populations of people with different needs, and thinking what you can design to really support them and giving them the best transformative dance experience. And I absolutely think, you are one of the very best in the country for doing that, Ruby. So thank you very much. And I'm sure the participants and your team would say the same. But it's really fascinating. She just brings bio in now. How both those sides of your life, you are really dovetailed and really have a synthesis. And I think hopefully for anybody watching who might be considering being a parent in dance but is kind of still in the area of, is that possible, and physically or more administratively jobs or that kind of thing, that's the best grammar these, they can really see that it absolutely is worth all of the toil and effort, because it reaps huge rewards. What kind of things would you say to somebody or give advice to for people who are considering having a family, but particularly in this context and working in the arts where things do look really precarious? What might you say to them? And that's a really tricky question, isn't it? But
it's particularly tricky at the moment, because we don't exactly know what the future is holding. But I think that people that work in the arts, as a massive generalisation, but I think it's a valid one, are really passionate about what they do and are quite creatively minded. And I think that creativity is key. I think that it's I think having a family and understanding creative ways to parent, and I don't just mean doing arts and crafts, I mean creativity as a basic way of living, it is hugely helpful to strengthening your professional ability to work in the arts. I think the emotional intelligence that having a family fosters is huge, and you can almost directly apply it when you come back into your professional context. I mean, in terms of financial positions and how precarious it is, particularly at the moment, I don't have an answer for that particularly, I'm afraid. I mean, it's a tragedy.
Yeah.
But I think there's something. I think for me, creativity is really key, and there's something about being open. What the amount of adaptations, the amount of thinking on your feet you have to do as a parent. That for me, who I'm a real planner, I really like to know what's coming next. I find it really, really challenging to kind of go into something not really knowing what the answer is going to be. But for me, I think that being brave enough to go into something, making adaptations, trailblazing away, and being open to listening and changing as you go based on what you're listening to, is the only way that the arts is as wonderful as it is. And particularly at the moment, as we emerge from COVID-19 and in relation to the Black Lives Matter movement, we need to listen more than ever and we need to make sure that we're going into something not thinking we've got all the answers. And so I would say that my skills as a parent and my experience as a parent really helps me understand the value of that, in terms of, I guess it's about, really being a parent is like the ultimate creating an inclusive environment. It's like the ultimate exercise in inclusivity, because you need to listen to what your kids need, and they will not let you do something that isn't what they need. They will get what they need one way or another. And if you listen and you try to offer something or shape something that is meeting their needs, sometimes their needs are just to be able to be heard, then everyone's life's going to be a lot nicer. And that, in a way, is the kind of nugget that you can take forward into the arts and into a career in the arts, to go, actually, this is a real skill, to be open and to be brave enough to move into a situation that you don't have all the answers, and you're creatively thinking about what you can present to somebody, or what a participation can look like, and how it can meet different needs and be as inclusive as possible. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does, and sort of thinking, it's made me reflect on my own parenting earlier today, which has been a bit a downer day on COVID-19 rather than an upper, but absolutely trying to listen. Particularly, I think the kind of work that we do, we are usually used to holding people in parenthesis with difficult emotions, and this time has just really exacerbated those. But I think will give us, again, hopefully, is another thing that we can take forward, is, as you say, the listening and the empathy skills that hopefully are positives that we can take into the future, because there absolutely is that element of further unpredictability of the rumoured second wave and all those kind of things that are going to make 2020 really difficult to navigate. I guess probably my last question to you, and we've covered quite a lot actually, which is great, would be just, are there any other things that we haven't covered that have played on your mind as a parent working in the arts, that either you don't feel has been talked about, or you'd want more attention on it, or any other things that haven't really been raised or highlighted?
I'm not sure there is, actually. I think that the importance of creating, of enabling somebody who is pregnant or about to embark on parenthood or is returning to the workplace after becoming a parent. I think the importance of support, and that support not being a one size fits all, is just so important. Again, it comes back to the listening, and enabling people to really be able to say what they need, and obviously you have to match that to the business needs. You can't just, people can't just make any demand that they want to make. There's obviously within reason, but I do think that enabling people to be heard and creating support systems where possible, and being really, really open to listening to what people need, is the most important thing. And not just going, oh no, sorry, we don't do it like that, so that's not going to work. It's that thing of being brave enough to really listening and really considering how you can make adaptations to the workplace which feel reasonable and meet the business need and support somebody coming back into the workplace. To me, that's one of the most important things. You'll retain more staff that way. You'll have a richer workforce, and you'll enable people to feel confident and comfortable to have families and still retain their career path.
Ruby, you're such an inspiration. I wish so many, a lot of managers or cultural leaders could really listen to that. I think a lot of them do, but I think there are proportions that don't necessarily have that view. And then we do find, don't we, a lot of freelancers or those in employment become who then become parents feel that they can't return because the artistic need is so much higher that they perceive that than their own needs as a human, having quite a regular, although exciting and unique in that way, but quite a common day experience. And I think that's just what a really lovely thing to end on, for everybody to hear, because I think you, having had the experience of you leading me, that's absolutely true. And I really wish that for lots of other people, that they have somebody as thoughtful and inspirational as yourself, Ruby, because so many people don't come back, and that retention of talent is a real issue. And I think now more than ever, that's going to be a worry, because I think either people are going to be put off through the experiences that they're going through now, or they're going to feel that the damage that is being done, and if it isn't supported by the government soon, is going to be permanent and not returning. And I think we all agree the first thing everybody turned to in the crisis was art, in whatever form that was. People were taking to Facebook or loads of social media platforms through either singing together or doing music together, TikTok videos. I think it's really heightened that importance, and I think hopefully those at the very top of the power chain, we hope that they'll listen, and we can create a better future out of quite a terrible situation sometimes. Ruby, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Please, anybody watching, do visit the Dance Mama site, dancemama.org, and also there are lots of activities that Ruby and her team have put out on the Royal Opera House website, which is www.roh.org.uk, and lots of things on the social media page as well, and YouTube in particular, for all of those fabulous screenings and repeats of amazing performances that can keep us all inspired until the time where we can get back all in one space together. Thank you.